but they both came out of their crease and charged each other at center.
Absolutely. And Claude Lemieux has gone to his own locker room right now, too, and is shaken up. But look at those goaltenders go at it.
I have never
Patrick's quote that he would have stopped me. I just want to know where he was in Game 3. Probably getting his jock out of the stands out of the Rafters United Center.
I can't really hear what Jeremy says because I got my 2 Stanley Cup rings plugged in my...
Some psychopaths end up in prison, some on the ice rink. This is Patrick Roy. The mention of Patrick Roy may very well evoke the idea of excellence associated with hockey in the minds of most. His illustrious career and goal, allegations of wrongdoing. Born October 5th, 1965, Patrick Roy is a name that sends shivers down opponents' spines. This Canadian legend is immortal for his spectacular saves. From early times with the Montreal Canadiens to the triumphant Colorado Avalanche years, Roy dominated between the pipes like none other. This guy with 4 Stanley Cup rings and Barbara and Michelle had a house full of hockey enthusiasts. So his younger brother, Stéphane, must have contracted the bug as well. At 7, the whole idea of being a goalie had already passed through the young Roy's mind. He developed his talents in the minor leagues and played in the prestigious Quebec International Pee Wee Hockey Tournament. Following his stint with the Sainte-Foy Gouverneur, where he was getting his feet wet, he continued playing for Granby Bisons of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, where his star began to rise. He then moved on to the professional ranks with the Sherbrooke Canadiens in the American Hockey League. But Roy's aggressiveness on the ice rink was going to sink into his personal life and create much more trouble on the field later in his life. To find out more, make sure to like and subscribe. And now, back to the video. It's hard to believe that a hockey legend like Patrick Roy was ever an angry, disgruntled draft pick, but here we are. A 3rd-round draft choice by the Montreal Canadiens, his arch-rival Quebec Nordique's greatest nemesis. In the 1984 NHL entry draft, Roy's heart wasn't exactly in it. His grandmother, a die-hard Habs fan, would have been elated with the selection, but she sadly passed away before she could see her grandson's big moment. He was about to prove Roy wrong. First, he dominated the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Then he got his NHL shot with the Canadiens. His first game was just forgetful, a shutout in relief. From there, it just became a whirlwind of success. He immediately became the starting goalie for the Canadiens and led them to the Stanley Cup that year, snatching the Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP at age 20, with a dramatic ending to Patrick Roy's time in Montreal. On December 2nd, 1995, the Canadiens would meet Detroit in a game remembered for all the wrong reasons. It was a pure...
Not the thing to do, no. Larionov behind the net. Sends it out to Fedorov. Scores! Sergei Fedorov! Bingo bango. Here comes the hook. Have mercy on me.
After allowing 9 goals on 26 shots, Waugh was finally replaced midway through the 2nd period. As he made his way to the bench, Waugh brushed past his head coach, Mario Tremblay. He then confronted team president Ronald Corey with the message that he would never play for Montreal again.
Patrick Waugh leaned over and spoke to the president.
Things came to a head during one game versus the Detroit Red Wings. Roy was pulled out after the 5th goal, an action he judged as public humiliation. He was suspended the following day. It was already very obvious that the tandem of Roy and Tremblay was irreparably damaged by that time. The writing was on the wall. It was December 6, 1995, when the unthinkable happened. In one move that would shake the hockey world, Patrick Roy and Mike Keane of the Montreal Canadiens were traded to the Colorado Avalanche in return for Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Rucinski, and Andrei Kovalenko. Getting pulled was not the end of Roy's lousy night. The Montreal Forum had been peculiarly designed, with the area behind the Canadiens bench reserved for team executives and other dignitaries. That peculiar design meant there wasn't any protective glass between the players and management. It was a raw moment in the world of emotion, and Roy didn't hesitate. On reaching the bench, he stormed by his coach and dove into a heated confrontation with Canadiens president Ronald Corey. Clearly, he stated, "It's my last game in Montreal." Roy then wordlessly passed by Tremblay again and plopped onto the bench. His actions sent shockwaves throughout the arena and the hockey world. It was a dramatic, very public end to to a once golden partnership. The next day, the Canadiens suspended Roy, thus putting even more drama into the life of one of the iconic faces of hockey. Many recriminations and finger-pointing took place afterward. First to come out and express regret for not pulling Roy earlier was he. Then Roy came back with his own damning accusation that Tremblay had left him in the net explicitly to humiliate him. He also expressed growing disillusionment with the team's overall direction. He felt that the Canadiens were straying from the kind of play that was responsible for their winning formula. As such, the combination of his personal conflict with Tremblay and dissatisfaction with the trajectory in which the team was heading made departure inevitable. It was only 4 days after that fateful Detroit game that the Montreal Canadiens shook the hockey world a second time. They shipped Patrick Roy and Mike Keane to the Colorado Avalanche in return for Jocelyn Thibault, Martin Rucinski, and Andrei Kovalenko. At that time, the trade was met with incredulity and criticism. Most felt the return for Roy was very inadequate. The Canadiens' general manager, Réjean Houle, who had been on the job for only 40 days, faced immense criticism for trading away a franchise icon instead of trying to mend things between Roy and coach Mario Tremblay. This trade would be recorded in hockey lore as one of the most one-sided deals ever made. Over the long haul, it would have a big impact on the Canadiens and the Avalanche. This trade forever changed the face of the NHL. The 2000-2001 season was the best for Patrick Roy and his Colorado Avalanche. They won the President's Trophy, which told people how the team performed over the regular season, but they still had to fight for the ultimate prize, the Stanley Cup. But Roy got into a heap of trouble during the 2000 season. Though Patrick Roy's on-ice persona was that of a fierce competitor, his personal life was marked by complexity. Married since 1990 to Michelle Pues, the couple has 3 children, Jonathan, Frederick, and Jana. But this ideal hockey family facade began to crumble in 2000. On the 22nd of October that year, a domestic argument...
Violence. Police came to Wa's Greenwood Village home at 2:23 early Sunday morning after receiving a 911 call with no voice at the other end. Michelle Wa, his wife, told the officer they had been arguing about in-laws. The police report said her husband got mad at her and pulled the 2 doors out of the walls located in her bedroom. It added she called 911 because she was afraid of her husband. Wa's parents and sister were in court but left without comment. The goalie was placed under a mandatory restraining order but can have contact with his wife. Any travel restrictions
It shook the hockey world and sent shockwaves among members of the public. The arrest cast a long shadow over Roy's previously pristine image. Despite the charges, the case would later be dismissed by a judge. Under that fiery, competitive spirit, those legendary saves was Patrick Roy, a man of peculiar habits. As with so many athletes, he was given to superstition, and his kooks were as colorful as his playing style. One of the famous Roy superstitions was the pregame routine. He'd get up and dress in ritual fashion, getting his equipment on in the same order each time, setting up his comfort zone, which he felt he needed to be at his best. His relationship with the actual hockey rink was quite strange as well. For instance, Roy famously never crossed over the blue and red lines, but rather hopped over them gingerly. This oddity, accompanied by the aspect of speaking to the posts, just further highlights the degree of weirdness belonging to a man already outsized in character. Although these eccentricities might seem a bit odd to your average fan, in this pressurized world of pro sports, athletes most often turn to routine and ritual for some sense of comfort. For Patrick Roy, those superstitions were part of his mental preparation, something that helped him stay focused and sharp. On their way to the Stanley Cup Finals, they met a New Jersey Devils team led by the young, up-and-coming talent Martin Brodeur, who was growing up as a Roy idol. It was quite the shootout between 2 of the league's top goaltenders. Through it all, Roy was superb, showing everyone his resilience and will. Slow in Game 5, he rebounded to shut out Game 6 and set a record for career playoff shutouts. The Avalanche finally closed the deal on the Stanley Cup in Game 7, giving Roy his 3rd Conn Smythe trophy as playoff MVP. It was an extra special win that would help end a long wait for legendary defenseman Ray Bourque, who finally got his hands on his elusive Stanley. On May 28, 2003, Patrick Roy officially announced his retirement, bringing to a close one of the most glorious careers ever forged in hockey history. His final game, an overtime loss to the Minnesota Wild in the first round of the playoffs in 2000, was time to take on a new challenge when he joined the Quebec Remparts of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League as vice president. Atmosphere. Roy's time in QMJHL helped him gain enormous experience and conditioned him for the next challenge, becoming an NHL head coach. He got into a heated argument with Pierre Cardinal, co-owner of the Chicoutimi Saguenayens. January 21, 2007, a defiant Patrick Roy stepped up to the microphone at a press conference. He said he was the victim of media bias. Roy claimed he did nothing wrong. This fiery coach didn't stay short about his being frustrated, so much so that he threatened to resign from being head coach and co-owner of the Remparts. Days later, however, everything changed. Pierre Cardinal announced on January 25th that he was dropping the assault charges against Roy. Before the scheduled press conference to determine his fate with the team, Roy confirmed his continued involvement with the Remparts following the development of the legal matter. On March 22, 2008, a hockey game between the Quebec Remparts and the Chicoutimi Saguenayens turned violent. As the Remparts were being blitzed 7-1 late in the second period, a brawl broke out. It culminated with Jonathan Roy, Patrick's son and the Remparts goalie.
Frustration s'empare des remparts. Tous les joueurs sur la glace sont impliqués dans une bagarre. Jonathan Roy, qui est venu dans le match en relève à défausser, aimerait bien participer à cette échauffourée, mais il est retenu par un arbitre. Roy échappe finalement à l'attention de l'officiel et attaque sauvagement Bobby Nadeau. Le gardien de Chicoutimi se protège du mieux qu'il peut face au coup de Roy. Une fois son combat terminé, le fils de Patrick, qui va de 2 doigts d'honneur à l'endroit de la foule, Sébastien Roux n'apprécie pas du tout ses gestes et décide de tenter de lui donner une correction.
The situation would only get worse for the younger Roy, who was at the center of a controversy that outraged many and drew investigation from the QMJHL and the Quebec authority. There was also controversy surrounding the coach, Patrick Roy. Some said he gestured to his son to attack and start the fight. Although he has denied that, the evidence seemed to speak otherwise. The fallout was swift and severe. Both father and son received suspensions and hefty fines. Jonathan Roy even faced criminal charges. It became a national news story as the debates over violence in hockey and the role of coaches, shock, parents, and youth sports took center stage. The turbulent relationship between the Roy family and hockey took another sad turn in November 2008. A day before the long-awaited retirement ceremony for Patrick Roy's jersey in Montreal, his other son, Frederick, found himself in trouble. During his time with the Remparts, Frederick cross-checked an opponent to the head while play was stopped. The QMJHL hit him with a substantial 15-game suspension, which somewhat dampened the upcoming celebration for his father. This incident showed more of how difficult it had been for the Roy family to enjoy favorable publicity while going through all their drama-intensive hockey phases. After those turbulent years in the QMJHL, it seemed as though Patrick Roy was attempting to stay out of the limelight. In 2009, there was speculation that he might come back into the NHL fold as head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, the team he had led to Stanley Cup glory as a player. When the offer was on the table, Roy passed, once again leaving the hockey world guessing. Fast forward to 2012, and Roy re-emerged in a different role. He became a hockey analyst for the now very popular French-Canadian hockey talk show, L'Antichambre. This would prove to be a career turning point in many ways. To express himself with ideas and opinions about the game he loves, without the pressures of coaching or management. The addition of Mario Tremblay, the coach who played a huge part in his going out of Montreal, certainly added an interesting dynamic to the show. It was a chance for Roy to face some old demons and perhaps put a different slant on their tempestuous relationship. News of the recent return of Patrick Roy to the NHL, this time as coach of the Colorado Avalanche, has garnered mixed emotions. While many welcome him back to the league, a former player emerged with charges of bullying and intimidation during his junior hockey coaching days. Louis Domingue, the goalie who played for Roy's Quebec Remparts in 2012, responded on social media, openly criticizing his former coach. The words Domingue used explained that he was getting a verbal abuse and humiliation regime from Roy for 3 years. Those allegations were very far from the public image of Roy, described as passionate and inspiring. It was further fueled by another former player, Peter Delmas, who corroborated Domingue's claims of being very demanding, especially to goalies. Roy has a record of an explosive temper, which in recent years has been chronicled by angrily lambasting opposing players in public. It was just dramatic in playing days as it was when Patrick Roy made his way back into the NHL as a coach. In 2013, he was appointed head coach and vice president of hockey operations by the Colorado Avalanche, the very team he had taken to glory and Stanley Cup glory during his playing career. Roy made an instant impact, and the Avalanche cruised through the regular season, winning the Central Division, while also securing the Jack Adams Award as the league's top coach for Roy. All that came crashing down in a disappointing first-round playoff exit. The following year, Colorado suffered a sharp setback and ended last in their division. The pressure came down hard on Roy, and finally he resigned from his job, claiming to have lost control of personnel decisions. But the hockey world is small. In January 2024, Roy stunned the hockey world again when he returned to the NHL as head coach for the New York Islanders. His appointment was met with excitement and skepticism in equal measure. The game of hockey ever had. But allegations that have surfaced recently have painted a different picture of the hockey icon. Allegations of verbal abuse and intimidation have tainted idealistic views of Roy as a passionate leader. His contributions to the sport are undeniable, but allegations that have been brought up challenge and call for careful consideration as we look at his overall impact on hockey. That's it for this one. If you're a fan of NHL icons, make sure to check out our other videos. Till then, see you next time.